They're voracious herbivores.
Hello, Somerville gardeners, and welcome to our first August workshop. Here on a less hot day, we'll be looking at signs of heat stress in some of our plants. We'll be staking up our tomatoes that have grown like crazy in this heat and are kind of outgrowing their stakes. We're going to show you how to harvest baby lettuce, plant some new things, and meet a new friend, a caterpillar friend actually. Without further ado, I'll introduce you to our farmer Eric from Green City Growers.
Hello everyone, I'm Farmer Eric from Green City Growers, and today we're going to be going over a few tasks. We're going to be learning how to prune some of our tomato plants and get them more under control after all of the heat of the summer really increases the growing speed of everything. So we're going to be working on that today. We're going to be looking at some signs of heat stress in plants, particularly our broccoli plants and our cilantro. We're going to be harvesting some of our baby lettuce over here. It's going to make a beautiful salad, and we're going to finish up by doing some planting. So we're going to be adding some seeds. We're also going to be doing some transplants as well, and I'm going to show you guys a sort of different way to add the transplants in today. So we're going to start off by examining our tomato plant. So actually, let's take a look at this one over here. So right now we have a tomato plant that's staked up all the way along its main stem. So the main stem is going all the way up in a relatively straight line like so, and there are also some branches coming off of our plant specifically towards the bottom. So these branches aren't really going to do much for our plant in terms of helping it with production. So we're just going to be able to remove a lot of those bottom leaves and bottom branches in general. So I'm going to take out my harvest knife, just slide down there, and we're going to start by just removing some of our bottom leaves. And now about the first 8 or so inches up the plant, there's no leaves, it's just a plain stem. So there are a couple of reasons that we're going to want to do this. The first is all plants need airflow. So they need air to be circulating over the leaves. It helps prevent diseases, especially with tomatoes who are super susceptible to most diseases. So if we have moisture sort of sitting on some of the bottom leaves when there's too much material near the soil, it's a really easy way for our plant to pick up fungal-borne pathogens, bacteria, and all those sorts of things that could end up killing our tomato plant. So we're just going to clear out the bottom section to prevent that. So once we've done that, the next thing that we're going to work on pruning out are suckers. So these are branches in the tomato plant that form between the stem and the main branch itself. Or it's stem between the stem and some of the main branches. So for example, we have our stem, which is crawling up right there. We have some main branches like this, and then see this tiny little guy right here. This is called a sucker. So this won't produce anything for the plant. It's mainly just going to produce leaves. The plant already has enough leaves for it to give energy to all of the fruit that it's going to form. So having the suckers on there is just another way to sort of decrease airflow, which we don't want. It's going to be taking away energy from ripening the fruit because it's just going to be putting into growing leaves and not anything helpful for us. So we're just going to be removing those. And it's also pretty important to get them when they're at a younger stage, so when they're still pretty small. And in this, we can just pinch them off like so. And get a nice pinch there. There are a couple others in here. And down over there. So the reason we want to get these when they're young is so they don't end up sort of trying to become another main stem of the plant. And if we move over to this tomato plant over here, we can actually see an example or suckers that are in different stages of their growth. So on this plant right here, we have the main stem growing up like this. Then we have what would be another main branch and this one right here. But then we have this one coming off over here at sort of like a 45-degree angle. This one at one point was a sucker about the same size as the smaller ones that we just plucked off. So this one, we're just going to take our knife, slice as close to the main stem as possible, and untangle this. And we're just gonna throw this one away because we don't need that anymore. So suckers can end up like trying to become main stems, like I was saying, and it can be sort of annoying at times if you have a relatively limited space and you have all these branches that are just going to try to grow up everywhere and sort of clutter your garden space. So removing those helps with aesthetics. It helps with sort of having the plant focus its energy on producing fruit instead of more leaves. It's also, yeah, it'll just be easier for the plant to grow if it doesn't have to support so much energy for stuff that's not going to give us anything. So I believe we got all of the suckers, but like I was saying, on the other plant, we want to remove a lot of the leaves for like the first like 8 inches of the plant or so, which unfortunately is going to include this branch right here. That's okay. It has a few flowers on it, but we're going to get most of the plant's fruit from the main stem over here. So this one is perfectly fine for us to just take our harvest knife or our pair of scissors, cut this off lower towards the base. And once again, removing the material close to the ground is going to increase airflow and just reduce the possibility of soil-borne contaminants like fungus, bacteria, and whatnot from getting on the leaves and causing more plant diseases. I'm going to finish up by just trying to maybe stake our tomato plant up a little bit, give it a little bit more support over here. So it's been leaning more towards this way, so we're going to sort of suggest that it come grow in this direction. And we're just using tomato tape. It's basically Velcro. The soft side is great for the inside, for touching the plant so it doesn't scar it or anything like that. And Velcro is all like weatherproof. Won't really have to worry about your plants slipping away. So we'll add a little bit of that. And I have some string that I'm just going to tie around the base for some extra support. When we're tying it around the base, it can be a pretty loose knot. It's not necessarily here to make it hug our post, but just some more general support for this viney crop. That's a general overview of how we're going to be pruning our tomatoes, removing the suckers, removing the branches from the bottom, like 8 inches or so. Yeah, and removing anything that could potentially be touching the soil and contaminate our plant with different soil-borne illnesses. Now that we've gotten that done, let's head on over to our broccoli and our cilantro over here. And talk a little bit about heat stress. So the first plant that I want us to look at is our broccoli head right over here. So if we take a peek down onto the stem, we can see that our plant is like these are technically small flowers. They're starting to grow more vertically instead of like bushing out like we'd like to see our broccoli head. And this is a direct response to heat stress. So brassicas, particularly like broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, are all like either spring or fall crops, so they don't really like the heat. And especially with those like 100-degree days we've been having over the past few weeks, it's not surprising that we're starting to see our plants start to look like this or start to go to flower. So this phenomenon is called bolting. So the heat causes the plant to get stressed out, and as a sort of natural reaction to that, the plant is like, okay, now it's getting super hot. It's hard for me to be able to continue growing. I'm going to spend the rest of my energy trying to produce seeds and reproduce, which is basically the goal of any plant. So when we see bolting like this, it basically means the plant's stressed out. You can't really do anything about it at that point anymore. There's already been like changes chemically inside the plant. We could harvest this get a very small head of broccoli, but if we just let this grow for a while, eventually the plant will end up shooting sort of long, thin stalks with some flowers on them, which is just the continuation of this. They'll turn yellow, and they won't be any good for us to eat. So this one, we'll probably just end up harvesting that. It's still like a decent looking head. It's just not exactly doing what we would want it to do. And then another sign of heat stress. So this is a plant that has pretty much fully bolted right here. This was our cilantro. So leaves used to look like this. Cilantro is another crop that tends to do better in cooler weather, so spring, fall, or if you're growing it in the shade, that can also be helpful. Yeah, basically these ones had all gone to flower. Cilantro has beautiful white flowers, sort of looks like Queen Anne's lace. You know what that plant looks like. Yeah, all of those flowers were pollinated, and what we're left with is all of these seeds. So the seeds you can actually harvest and use. So that's basically just what coriander is cilantro seeds. So we could simply pinch these off and just sort of scrub them off there from the plant itself. And we let these dry for like a week or so, and we have coriander that you can grind up using all sorts of different cooking and whatnot. So sometimes heat stress can be bad for our plant, like with our broccoli, but other times it can be good depending on what you're going for. Like with our cilantro, if you want coriander seeds, just let your cilantro bolt, and you'll get it. Or have it grow in cooler climates, and you'll be able to harvest like the leaves throughout most of the fall and spring season. The next thing that we're going to be doing today is harvesting some of our lettuce from over here. So this is a Mesclun mixed lettuce. It's a mix of a bunch of different varieties of lettuce. With these, we just sort of sprinkle the seeds onto the surface of the soil. We don't really need to worry about burying it or anything like that. So something interesting about lettuce, the seeds actually need light to be able to germinate. So if we were to bury it, we would basically just be wasting a bunch of seed in this section. So the way that we're going to be harvesting this today, it's pretty simple. If you have a knife, like I have my harvest knife here today, or if you have a pair of scissors, you'll be able to harvest plenty of this lettuce for yourself. So the way that I prefer to do it, just to move our sage bush out of the way a little bit, sort of just grab a handful, sort of like that, take our knife or scissors, and we're going to try to cut as close to the actual soil of the surface as possible. So we're just going to just run my knife back and forth across there, like so. Tap away any of the little dead leaves towards the bottom. And obviously you'll be getting all of this out once it gets washed, and you have this beautiful handful of a nice like mixed green lettuce. It tastes delicious. It also adds some nice color to your plate or to your bowl. So yeah, we're gonna harvest this section right here. We're gonna remove all of our little roots from these plants, and we're gonna be planting something new in there today. And once you get like pretty comfortable doing this, the process gets a little bit quicker. And occasionally you'll end up pulling the roots out of some of them. That's all right, just toss them to the side. And another thing, typically with lettuce mixes like this, we're harvesting them at a stage, or we're harvesting at a stage where we don't have to worry about them bolting. The plants aren't mature enough for that yet. So this stuff can get pretty tall. I'd say you should harvest it between when the leaves are about 4 to 8 inches tall. So it's pretty much our cut lettuce section. If we wanted to, we could leave this in here, and all of this would grow back in about like 3 to 4 weeks or so. But we have that section over there, so we're gonna leave that one and then remove this stuff from over here. And during another video or something, we can harvest that one as well. So yeah, next step is just going to be removing this, digging up all the roots and whatnot, and figuring out what we're going to plant in next. So I got a trowel and something to put all of our compostable material into. So I'm just going to basically start by removing the stuff that I can just remove by hand. And any of the leftover bits, I'm sort of just going to turn into the soil using my trowel. Scooping it in, twisting it around, and then yeah, sort of just mix everything in with my hands a little bit. Gardening, you're supposed to get your hands dirty, so definitely doing that today. Turn everything over, like break up any clumps or roots that you might see, like stuff like that. You have a bed that's good to get planted in. So talking earlier about having a couple different methods of planting. So there's seeding like we've done before, and then there's another method with our transplants that we're going to be using in this section over here. So if you want to take a look over this way, we can get into that. So today, before we're planting our transplants, we're going to be doing a fertilizer dunk to basically saturate their small root balls with a nice bit of fertilizer that's pretty heavy in nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, which are like the big three vitamins and minerals that plants need to be able to grow. So I have some cabbage plants right here, some cabbage transplants. I have a couple chard that we're gonna see if we can find some space for. We're gonna be trying to replant some of that cilantro to get rid of the stuff that's bolted. And we're gonna see if we can find some space for our head lettuce in here as well. So to do the dunk, basically all you really need is a 5-gallon bucket filled up about a third of the way full. We're gonna take some of our fish emulsion fertilizer. So I don't use like a particular like amount. I pretty much just pour a splash in like so. Cap it, stir it around a little bit. That until you get this nice brown color to it. Now next, we're literally just going to take some of our transplants. So we're going to use these cabbage. That's going to go where our lettuce was planted. Just take these, drop them in there. It's okay if the leaves get wet. This is also used, this fertilizer is also used as a foliar spray, which means it can be absorbed through the leaves as well. We're pretty much just going to leave this in here for about 10-15 seconds or so, just making sure everything is fully saturated. And then now these are now ready to plant. So while we're planting these, I'm going to leave some of the other ones in here to soak as well. So over here, this one actually has two growing up next to each other. That's not necessarily a good thing for a transplant. So it's going to take one of them. They're about the same size, so I'm going to choose the one on the left. Just cut that off at the base. So if these end up growing too close to each other, neither one is going to end up growing to full size because they just simply didn't have enough space. So once again, for the planting, use our hand shovel here. You need to fill a little hole, loosen up the root ball a little bit, and plant it just a little bit below the depth of the soil. So got our two chard plugs here. This one of the ones we planted last time, I believe, something's gotten to it, something's been eating at it. So just gonna remove this plug right here, dig a little hole, and plant it like so. And we got some more space over here. We're gonna do another one pretty close up to our zinnias, but that's okay. So again, there were two seeds planted here, so we'll just remove our smaller one like that. And we got this planted like right in here. And hopefully rabbits or chipmunks or whatever is eating at these won't be too much of a problem. And the next thing that we're gonna do is sort of replace our cilantro over in this section. So just gonna remove this old plant. Gonna leave it in a safe spot so we can actually harvest some of these coriander seeds. And cilantro can actually grow pretty close to each other. So in this like plug right here, there are actually 5 different plants in here, so it can grow pretty close together. So we should be able to fit all 3 in this section over here. A little plug right there. And another thing when you're doing the soil dunks, or the plug dunks with the fertilizer, it's okay if some of the soil washes away. It's going right into more soil anyway, so no need to worry about that. So again, just burying in like so. So we've got our herbs and whatnot planted. We've got our cabbages, we've got our chard planted. Our final step is just to add our lettuce. So I like sort of having lettuce in rotation in a specific section. So over here we have some head lettuce already growing from last session, and we're going to be adding this lettuce in here. So basically this section ideally will never be bare with lettuce. So these ones will be ready to harvest while these ones are still growing. And you'll have a good cycle of stuff to be able to harvest from. So same as before, plug right in the ground. Do another one. These are actually the stumps from some of the old lettuce plants. Turn this up a little bit. Like so. And this one, some can go over here in the corner. A little farther over. Perfect. So now we've got all of our transplants put in the ground, and our next step is just to finish up by adding some of our seeds. So with me today, I have some more bush beans. So fortunately, some of the seeds that we planted in here last time didn't germinate, so we're just going to add some more to that. These are just regular plain old green bean seeds, and we're still going to do the same, pretty much same spacing as we did before. So take our 2 fingers like so, one plant here, we're going to put another seed there, and then swing it over, another seed right there. We already got one here, have another one there. We only had to plant 4 more seeds in here, but ideally, because we're planting them at a different time than what's already planted, we'll be able to harvest beans like more frequently throughout the season. So it's sort of like a successional thing. This is going to be our first generation of beans, so we'll be able to harvest those first. Our second generation is what we've just planted. So yeah, those will be ready later on in the season. And over here, I noticed that our carrots did not do as well as we would have liked. So those ones, we were going to sort of just shuffle up the soil, get rid of any seeds that might still be in there, and we're going to focus on another crop, another root vegetable. We're going to be planting some watermelon radishes. So these are a longer seasoned radish than the typical red ones that you're used to seeing. These ones are gonna be in the ground for a bit longer, about 50 to 60 days, compared to just regular radishes, which are in for, I don't know, probably about a month. These ones will also be a little bit larger in size, and they'll store a lot better. So you can plant these now, or basically until like the end of August or September, and be able to have good radishes for like most of the winter, I'd say. So yeah, we're just gonna take our seeds, and these ones will get a little bit bigger, so we're gonna plant them about 1.5 to 2 inches apart. And you could just sort of sprinkle a bunch of seeds on in this one section, but then you're gonna have to thin them out later on, and that's just more of a hassle for us. So we'll take the time and actually space them out while we're seeding them. So if you just want to take a look at how things are doing from our last video, the kale, the Toscano kale that we planted here has fully established itself, which means the roots have sort of left the ball that they were in and have expanded into the surrounding soil. So if you just give this a little pull, there's a good amount of resistance here. This isn't just going to get like ripped out of the soil by anything. So that's a main sign that you can tell that it's established and now it's actually starting to grow. You can see a little bit of new growth coming from the center in here. That's exciting to see. Our chard is also doing well. There's no sign of leaf miner damage yet. Leaf miners are basically this pest. They lay their eggs on the undersides of the leaves of chennapods. So chennapods are Swiss chard, beets, and spinach primarily in terms of stuff that we grow. And basically they'll lay their eggs on the bottom sides of the leaves. They're a tiny little fly. The eggs will hatch and they'll bore themselves into the in between like the 2 layers of the leaf here, and they'll sort of just hollow out they'll sort of hollow out the leaf, and you can tell that they're in there because it'll leave a trail wherever they've been eating. It's actually kind of cool sometimes. We don't have an example of it now, but sometimes in the spring, you can take a leaf and that has lots of leaf miner damage, so a lot of those trails in it. You can hold it up to the sun and you can actually see the little maggot crawling around inside in there, which is kind of gross, kind of cool depending on who you are. Yeah. So no sign of that yet on our chard. We're gonna have to keep an eye out for that once it starts to get a little bit cooler. So once the fall comes around and those temperatures start to come down, we'll most likely be seeing more leaf miner on our chard, our spinach, and our beets. But for right now, we're in the clear. Yeah, and then I guess one other thing, we left this bulb of garlic in the ground to see what would happen to our flower. So it's already opened up a lot more than it has, a lot more than it was last time, and sort of starting to form these like pretty hard balls over here. I'm still not 100% sure what's going to happen with this. I've never seen it. I've never grown garlic for this flower in particular, so I'm just predicting that we're going to see some sort of seed of some sort coming through here. And you can actually see like these were tiny flowers or little florets coming from this bulb in general. But yeah, we'll leave this in the ground for a little bit longer, see what happens. I'm curious to see what's going to happen with it. Yeah, so just leave this in the ground for a bit longer. And one other thing that I want to show you guys is our cucumbers. So during the last time that I was here, our cucumbers were growing just very small little baby cucumbers. Now we're actually starting to see some full-size fruit. So like this, or not full-size, but growing to full-size fruit. So we got more like these. This one's gonna be good. And then if we move on down to this plant over here, you can see some of our larger ones. So these ones, we could harvest these now, but I'm gonna let them go for a couple more days. So probably I'd say on Friday that these would be ready to harvest. This variety is a smaller variety. So this is a pickling variety instead of a slicing variety. So these ones are going to be more blimp shaped, so a little bit like shorter and stout compared to like the cucumbers that you'd want to use in a salad, which are longer and skinnier. For the final little bit, I wanted to show you guys what some consider a pest. I consider to be a pretty cool insect, and we have here is a swallowtail butterfly caterpillar. So these ones will go after, currently it's eating a piece of fennel, or a leaf from a piece of fennel, but it will, this variety will go after like carrots, the leaves of carrots, fennel. It will go after dill. It'll also go after parsley. But the good thing, I guess the good thing about those is that if the leaves get eaten, it's not so big of an issue as if like your kale leaves are getting eaten by these guys. So these ones, I personally really like to find these in the garden, because once they'll do a little bit of damage now, but once they go through metamorphosis and form their chrysalis and turn into a butterfly, they're going to be all over our flowers, helping to pollinate just pretty much everything that we have in the garden. So if you do see these and you see a lot of them and they're like doing significant damage to your garden, I'd recommend just sort of like cutting a branch or cutting whatever they are eating on, and you can like move it to somewhere else in your yard where they're farther away from your garden's food source. But they'll still be able to find stuff to survive on out there. Yeah. So yeah, this little guy is on the larger side. I'd say this one will probably form a cocoon in about like a week to 2 weeks or so, maybe sooner. Yeah, then give it another 2 weeks or so to form, to change inside its cocoon and turn into a butterfly, and then from there, we'll be good to go off in pollinating the rest of the world. That's pretty much all that I have for the garden today. It's been awesome getting to work with you guys, and see you guys next time.